So let's start off with what to watch when the Raiders have the ball.
Yeah, I think for me, I'm gonna be focused on the trenches. Their offensive line, you mentioned it. They really haven't. They didn't get an opportunity to play it all together in the preseason due to injuries. And particularly, me watching the tackles. Obviously, the Chargers' defensive line is led by Khalil Mack, old friend, and Joey Bosa. So seeing how Colton Miller looks out there after recovering from offseason shoulder surgery on the left side, and then obviously on the right side, Thayer Munford, his first year as a full-time starter, seeing how he holds up, in terms of protecting the passer. But also, I think like when you look at the Chargers roster, they don't really have a difference maker at defensive tackle, and so that should be an area where on the interior run game, the Raiders should be able to take advantage. And you mentioned they're switching to that wide zone, and Luke Getsy has a tendency to run the ball a lot in the past, and they want to have a lot of success in that area this year. Like if they should be able to take advantage of the Chargers, who've been one of the worst rushing defenses in the league the last couple of years, and so I think how the Raiders' offensive line fares is really going to dictate this game offensively for them. Even if Minshew is the right fit and has experience, like it's not going to do him too much good if the offensive line is getting their ass kicked. So I think that's where this game's going to be won or lost.
I like that one. And Colton Miller, he came back from his injury a few weeks back. He's looked good. I think Getsy mentioned how they can build an offense around your left tackle, which I thought was kind of an interesting way to put it. But clearly, Deshaun's right. The O-line's a big deal. I think they got to make some holes for Zamir White and give Gardner time. I think that's probably a good way to watch this game is up front in the trenches. And we saw last year when Mac ran wild, had 6 sacks. That can't happen again. So I think that's definitely the focus of this game. That sets the table for everybody else. If they play well, it'll be easier for Zamir and Gardner to also play well.
Yeah, I agree. I think the offensive line has to be the focus here, and not just in a run game, but also in pass protection. Because Jesse Minter, he comes from that McDonald-like system where they're going to test your communication. They're going to, present a bunch of different fronts. They're going to blitz. They're going to simulate blitzes and back out of it. Like, how well is this line going to communicate early on, especially because they didn't have a lot of reps together? So that's going to be a question. And with all this movement, that's going to create some one-on-ones for Khalil Mack. And like you guys mentioned, Khalil Mack made his whole season out of that one game with the Raiders. People are calling him elite again, just because he's well into the double digits thanks to that game. But yeah, we'll see. I mean, it's a tricky defense. I think it does take a little while to really learn this defense and really be able to get into all the multiplicity that they want to. So maybe being early in the season will benefit the Raiders, but I definitely think communication will be tested.
Yeah, it seems like the Raiders should be ahead in this process, right? It's a matchup of similar teams who don't want to be physical, want to run the ball, and the culture change, all that stuff. It seems like the Raiders should be ahead in this process because they've had Antonio Pierce there since last year, and Harbaugh, like you said, new system, new defense, a lot of overhaul on offense. So it seems like to me, we'll get into it later with predictions, but this is a game the Raiders should win, I think, because of not only the talent but also the continuity on defense and also on the whole roster.
Yeah. All right. So what are we watching when the Chargers have the ball?
I think it's what Vic said in the preview or earlier in the show about the run defense. I think can Greg Roman and his Chargers offense just run all over Patrick Graham's defense how they have in the past, and so I think that's going to be the key to this game. I mean, we saw it in the preseason. The Raiders' rush defense was pretty bad. I know the starters didn't play that much, but even when the starters were out there, it didn't look too good. And so the rest of this Chargers offense just isn't really that scary. Obviously, they have Justin Herbert at quarterback, but like their receiving talent isn't anything that's going to keep you up at night. They don't have a dynamic tight end or anything of that nature. And so if you can bottle up their run game, like they should pretty much be cooked on offense. And so I think that's going to be the pivotal thing for the Raiders defense is, was that just some preseason shit and they weren't fully locked in, or are they actually going to be a liability against the run this year?
Yeah, stop the run and make Josh Palmer and Quentin Johnson beat you. If they beat you, you tip your cap and say, all right. But definitely don't let the other guys beat you because if you stack the box against the run and force them to do something else, that would be the way to go.
Yeah, and I know Patrick Graham talked about not really knowing what the Chargers want to do, but when you look at what they did in the offseason, I think they're signaling what they want to do They got rid of Keenan Allen, got rid of Mike Williams, signed a couple tight ends, Will Dissly, Hayden Hurst, and they didn't with the first round pick. They had their pick of three amazing receiver prospects. Chose Joe Alt. They want to run the ball. They want to put heavy bodies on the field. We're going to see multiple tight ends, and Greg Roman's going to try to rush for another 250 on Patrick Graham, and we'll see how they stop him. I think they're going to line up in a bunch of odd fronts. Like I don't think they're just going to line up in a 4-man front. I think they're going to line up in some 3-4 fronts, and it'll be interesting to see who's on the field. Maybe you put Tyree Wilson at one of the interior spots, and then you have Kuntz and Crosby outside. Um, but I think they're going to change up their fronts a little bit just because they are a little bit lighter, and I think they know that the Chargers are going to try to run the ball.
Yeah, I mean, we'll see on the front piece, but I wonder, just in terms of like their personnel, because like I think the Raiders last year they led the league in nickel, where they only have 2 linebackers on the field. I wonder if we see them go to more base against the Chargers, especially since they don't have a ton of receiving talent that scares you. Like, does it make sense to bring a third linebacker on the field more often than they've done in the past? What do you think, Ted?
Well, I think if they do go base, I think it's going to be more odd front. So they bring an extra defensive lineman on the field instead of an extra linebacker. So you'll see, 3-4, and you have your 2 inside linebackers back there, but you have that, 5 guys at the front of the line.
Yeah, we'll see. I don't remember seeing them whip that out too much in training camp, but maybe they've been keeping that from us. But it'll be interesting to watch.
They don't want Tashan Reed and Vic Tafur, giving out all the secrets too early. What are you guys looking at as far as matchups of the game?
I think when I'm locked in on, I think Max Crosby, because he typically lines up at left defensive end, or like the offensive right. I think him versus Joe Alt, I think is what I'm gonna be watching. Rookie offensive tackles usually don't come out the gate strong. Obviously, the Chargers had one of the exceptions a couple years ago where Rashawn Slater being an All Pro right away, but rookie offensive tackles usually have some warts, especially early in the season, and you would think that's a matchup that Crosby should be able to dominate. And he's a guy that, I mean, we saw him wreck a lot of practices in training camp, and he can wreck this game for the Chargers. I think both in the pass game and the run game, if he's able to take advantage of all. So I think that's something, in terms of the Raiders should be able to exploit.
That's good. I would look at the how the Chargers plan to deal with the 2 tight ends, how they're going to deal with Bowers and Michael Mayer. Both had great camps. I think we'll see them line up together, same side, different sides. Bowers would be, like you mentioned, outside. And so they're going to try and dictate what they want to do against the Chargers based on where those guys line up and how the Chargers react with versus if they're run fit or a passing fit. So I think that will be a key area to watch. What the Chargers do with those 2 guys, and then the next move, how the Raiders kind of counter react to that counter move. So I think that'll be a good chess match.
Yeah, I'll be watching Christian Wilkins against the Chargers interior. They want to run the ball, but the guards are a little questionable. They're moving Trey Pipkins to guard, and obviously Wilkins is the new addition. So I think this is the game where he could make a statement and his impact felt right away, especially in the run game against an interior. I think that is questionable. So I think he got paid a ton of money. We want to see him make an impact right away in this game. X factors. Who are you guys X factors?
I'll go first. I'll go with Trey Tucker. Trey Tucker is a guy that Antonio Pierce talked a lot about in the offseason, about a guy who's really worked hard and kind of making the next stride you need to in year 2. Obviously, a fast guy who's learning how to better run routes and use his hands better in terms of late breaking catches. But then we had training camp, and he couldn't hold on to the ball. The guy had a drop almost every day for the first 2 weeks of camp. And I was like, what the hell is Antonio talking about? This guy can't hold on to the ball. But then he definitely got better. He mentioned he had LASIK surgery. Maybe it took a while for it to kind of to click in, but end of camp,
Settle in. The cornea.
I wouldn't know. But apparently, whatever it takes, because there's a grace period. Because end of camp in the preseason, he looked very good. He's been really sharp the last month or so, and I think he's a guy who can give you the extra element you need, kind of to force defense to approach you differently. He can't pack the box too much to be always with a deep threat. He's very fast, can run by anybody. I think his route running and hands have improved. he could be a guy who makes some big plays for this team this season.
You got to
You guys heard of Scott Matlock? You know who he is?
no, I have no idea who that
Is
is.
that
He's the
the
Chargers.
lawyer, the Andy Griffith show, Matlock? No.
No,
Mhm.
he's the Chargers starting fullback. He's 6'4", 300 pounds. Basically, basically Greg Roman is trying to create his own Patrick Ricard in LA, and
Okay.
that's not my X factor, but I just thought I had to.
Just
Okay.
random.
Just
Hey,
wanted to
hey.
mention.
All
All right,
right, cool.
who's your actual fucking expected?
That was your wife. That was your wife factor. Who's your X factor?
My X factor is Jacorian Bennett. I think I kind of think I thought maybe they'll try to test Jack Jones because he got that pick six against them. He was very aggressive. He got beat against the Cowboys in the preseason game. But I think if they're going to test out a corner, they're going to test out Jacorian Bennett, and he's the question mark in the secondary. To see if it's going to be a solid secondary or one with holes. We think they're going to run the ball, but when they do pass the ball, I think they're going to test out Jacorian Bennett. So we'll see how he performs. I have faith in Jacorian Bennett. I think he's developed and gotten better. So I think he can make a positive impact when they do test him.
It's kind of cheating for my answer, but I guess the kickoff rule. I think whoever takes advantage of that the most would it be in the first week where it really counts and teams fully start to unleash their strategies that they kept under the lid in the preseason. See how this works. I think these are like two relatively evenly matched teams, but I think that field position game, how that shakes out, obviously for every game, but especially in this one, is going to play a big factor. And so, I think we saw in the preseason, Tyreek McAllister made a big impact, especially as a punt returner. But does he have that role full time now for the Raiders when they're fielding kicks? And then how do they handle in terms of the coverage unit? I mean, they kept seven linebackers. So hopefully, be pretty good in that area. Otherwise, need to mix some things up. But I think that could be something that ends up swinging this game because I do think it's going to come down to being something that's pretty close.
It feels like teams are trying things out in camp, trying to be secretive. We wrote about the whole Jack Jones kicking the ball off and Luke Masterson, and I'm not sure they're going to actually try that because I think they kind of maybe they realize, you know what, let's take the touchback to the 30-yard line and not get too fancy. But I mean, you never know. I mean, it'll definitely be some team may get creative, and we'll see if the Raiders are one of those teams. But I heard a stat today where in the preseason there were 11 tackles made by kickers, which you're trying to avoid. You don't want your kicker to be exposed to that much. So I think Dale Carlson's a tough kid, but obviously if that's a concern, maybe you try somebody else. But I think right now the plan is to play vanilla. So, but you never know. I think it was kind of interesting to see Jack Jones out there, camp kicking the ball out. He wasn't bad either. So I think that's always a possibility. But I kind of lean towards them playing it safe and not being too creative at week one.
Yeah, I mean, teams have definitely been experimenting with things in training camp that they haven't put out in the preseason film. I mean, I've seen it. Obviously, I'm not going to try to expose these schemes, but it'll be interesting to see if they actually bring them out on the field when the season starts. I kind of have a feeling that they're going to move the touchback line to the 35-yard line to incentivize more kickoffs because if teams are just going to take the touchback, then that kind of defeats the purpose of changing the whole format.
Right.
Well, it sounds like they were going to change something. I know Donna Ponte. There's she's kind of on their competition committee. She said that they probably would have changed it before the season started. Like it's not completely impossible for them to change rules once the season is underway, but it's pretty rare that it happens. But this is a 1 year rule, so they can always tweak it again, or they have to tweak it again in this off season. So maybe that's a next year thing. But it sounds like this year they're going to be keeping it at the 30.
All right, let's get to predictions. Vic, what's Vic's pick this week?
I picked the Raiders to win. I think they're in a good spot to do it. I think they should win. I think basically based on the roster talent and kind of like I mentioned, having a head start and kind of building this culture they want to set. And I think they have a pretty good plan. So I'll go the Raiders 23, the Chargers 17.
23.
All right. I think the Raiders are also going to win. I don't think this is going to be a high scoring game. I think I'm not a gambling man, but one of my friends that is said it's like I think this is the lowest like over under in the NFL in week one or something like that. So I don't think people are expecting fireworks. So I'm going with the Raiders 21, Chargers 20. I think they win a close one, but start the season on a high note.
Yeah, I think the Raiders are going to win too. I think They're catching the
fucked. They're fucked.
We're fucked.
They're
sorry.
done.
I considered deviating, but I just think they're catching the Chargers at the right time. Justin Herbert dealing with a foot injury. The defense is not quite installed yet. I think this Chargers team has things to figure out, and the Raiders have a little bit more continuity. I agree with you. I think it's probably a low-scoring game because the Raiders' offense has some things to figure out too, but they have some good skill players and some talent there. So yeah, I think Raiders are going to win this game. 20. It'll be close to Vic's score. I'll say 21-17.
So, in summary,
Actually, I'm gonna make it 21-16.
if you're betting this game, bet the Chargers and the over. Because we'll see though. Hopefully for Raider fans we're correct, but history is not should not to be the case when we all agree. But you never know. It's week one. Angst.
We got to keep a counter at that this year. Our producer Neil.
All right.
Typically, whenever we all pick something to happen, the exact opposite thing happens. So we have to see how often that happens this year to see if
I would ask Neil his pick, but I know he's a Raider fan, so I'm pretty sure he has the Raiders 35-10 or something. So
he said before we recorded, his prediction was 10 wins for the Raiders this year. So
yeah, there you go.
I mean, Vic called this a must-win game on the last pod. So
I did. I said must-win.
Week one is must-win.
I didn't say must-win. It's kind of a must-win game for the Raiders.
You said it was a must-win because
actually, you did. You said that. I think you highlighted the games against the Panthers, the Browns, and the Chargers. So.
They're all must-win.
They're all must-win. Wow, what a buffoon! All right, must-win. I'll double down. Must-win.